Welcome to the End of Eternity channel. We tend to think of the sun as just a light in the sky, but it's the heart of our system, the breath of life itself. Imagine stepping outside one morning and the light is gone. No clouds, no night, just emptiness. What would happen to Earth if the sun disappeared? Subscribe and let's take a look at what lies behind the light. The sun is our silent center, our invisible axis. We live without realizing that every breath, every shadow on the wall, every sunrise and sunset is the result of its eternal pulse. Its light gives birth to the morning, warms the oceans, and paints life in a billion shades. Everything we know, every leaf, every breath, every thought exists only because a single star burns at the center of our solar system. But what if one day she just disappears? Without warning, without a sound, without an explosion. One moment, and there will be nothing left in the sky. No warmth, no light, only darkness, indifferent and cold. At such moments, a person begins to understand how fragile everything that seems eternal is. We are accustomed to rhythm. Day follows night, life follows life, but the cosmos knows no habits, it promises no continuation. On its scale, even the sun is just a flash, a short breath that will one day cease. Humanity has always sought meaning by looking to the sky. When the ancients looked at the sun, they saw it as a deity, a symbol of power, life, and immortality. When scientists realized it was just a star, the meaning didn't disappear, it just became more complex. We started asking other questions. It's not who sent the light, but why it exists at all. It's not who we owe life to, but why it arose at all. And this question, what would happen if the sun disappeared, is, in a sense, not about physics. It's about ourselves. Because every person, one way or another, experiences their own personal decline. Moments when something that seemed eternal suddenly vanishes, and all that remains is coldness and silence, in which new meaning must be found. But the universe is indifferent. It doesn't answer our questions. Its language is billions of years, and the silent laws by which stars are born and die. And in this silence, man remains alone. Alone but still able to ask questions. When the sun disappears, the earth will continue to move. Inertia will keep it on track for a few more minutes, until gravity gives in. The light we see now is from the past. It takes 8 minutes to reach us. So even if the sun has already disappeared, we still live in its reflection. It's a metaphor for all of human nature. We always live in the light of something long gone. The light of lost stars, the voices of dead civilizations, the dreams of those who will never return. All of this is reflected in us and makes us alive. When darkness covers the earth, the colors will be the first to disappear. Then life. The oceans will freeze, the atmosphere will freeze, the planet will become an icy sphere drifting into infinity. But even then, somewhere deep in matter, in molecular structures, energy will remain, a trace of what was once light. And perhaps this is precisely the meaning. That even in compel eat darkness, the remnants of warmth will long preserve the memory of the star. We're used to thinking of the end as emptiness. But in space, there's no absolute end. Everything merely transforms, passes from one form to another. The sun is no exception. When it disappears, what remains is not darkness, but a trace, a memory, an imprint in space-time. And perhaps it is in this memory that a new star is born, somewhere far away, billions of years away. The universe is a cycle. Light is born, dies, and returns again. We are part of this cycle. Human thought is also a form of light. It moves like a beam through space and time, and even if its source disappears, the movement continues. What would happen if the sun disappeared? Maybe nothing. Or maybe that's all. Because disappearance will force us to truly look into the darkness for the first time. And in this darkness, perhaps, we will see ourselves. We will understand that life does not rest on the light of a single star. That meaning lies not in warmth, but in those who are able to seek it, even when all else has faded. And perhaps at that moment humanity will realize that the end of the sun is not the end of us. We will simply become a shadow of the light that once was. Darkness is not scary if you remember that it was once light. And so, when the sun disappears, a new story begins. A story about what will happen to our planet, to us, to life itself. Science already has answers, cold, precise, but poetic in their own way. The first of these is a theory that tells what will happen in the first 8 minutes after the disappearance of the sun. Theory 1. Earth's energy survival. Imagine everything disappearing in an instant. Not an explosion, not a flash, not a warning. Just, the sun goes out. Without a sound, without a trace, without a shadow. A second ago it was there, and now it's gone. The first thing we'll feel isn't darkness. Until the light emitted 8 minutes ago reaches us, Earth will live under the illusion that all is well. The last 8 minutes of light are the last 8 minutes of the familiar world. Birds will fly across the sky. Clocks will continue to tick. Children will play in the sun, not knowing that the sun itself is already dead. But then the moment will come when the rays born in its depths will cease to exist, and everything will be plunged into a shadow that will never dissipate. What would happen to Earth without light? At first glance, it's obvious, everything would freeze. But in reality, this wouldn't happen instantly. The planet stores a huge reserve of internal energy. This isn't just the heat of the surface. It's the planet's deep respiration. Its core, its mantle, tectonic processes, and radioactive decay. The theory of Earth's energetic survival begins. It says, even without the sun, Earth won't die immediately. It's not a dead stone. It's capable of survival. This idea wasn't born from fantasy, but from observations of places on Earth where sunlight barely penetrates. In the ocean depths, kilometers below the surface, entire worlds exist. Bacteria, worms, mollusks, that live without light. Their energy is not solar, but geothermal. They are fed by the Earth's heat, which comes from below, from the radioactive decay of uranium, thorium, and potassium in the core. This heat is generated not on the surface, but deep within. And it is this heat that makes the Earth alive from within. Scientists have discovered that even if the planet's surface were completely frozen, pockets of life could remain deep within the oceans, places where hot springs continue to EW minerals, and bacteria convert them into energy. This life was ancient, almost alien, but it proved that heat could exist without light. Thus was born the idea the Earth could survive without the sun, if not in its usual form, then in its own subterranean rhythm. To understand how long a planet can survive, we need to look at where it gets its internal heat. The main source is the radioactive decay of elements. When the nuclei of heavy atoms decay, they release energy. This energy slowly but steadily warms the mantle. It causes plate movement, generates volcanoes, and gives the Earth its internal heat. Even if the sun were to disappear, this process would not cease. A huge amount of heat would remain in the depths of the Earth, enough to maintain a temperature of several thousand degrees. The surface will, of course, cool quickly. Within a week, the temperature will drop to minus 70 degrees Celsius. Within a year, to minus 200 degrees Celsius. The oceans will freeze over, but liquid water will remain beneath the ice, possibly for thousands of years. Life on the surface will disappear, but in the depths of the ocean, near geothermal vents, it could survive. Their sunlight isn't needed, only the Earth's own energy. The first calculations for such a scenario appeared in the 20th century, when astrobiologists began exploring the possibility of life on planets without a star. They found a surprising analog: Jupiter's moon Europa. It receives very little sunlight, but calculations suggest that beneath its icy crust lies an ocean of water, heated by its internal heat. The same is true of Enceladus, a moon of Saturn. Jets of water vapor and organic matter erupt from its surface. These worlds are proof that the heat of the core can support life, even where the sun is almost absent. This is how the hypothesis emerged. If the Earth lost its sun, it would become something like Europa, an ice-covered planet, but with living depths. However, there is a downside. Geothermal energy is not infinite. The Earth's core is gradually cooling, and if the thermal balance is disrupted, even underground life will eventually die out. Scientists estimate that without external heating, the planet could remain active for about 1 billion years, and then completely die out. But for life, even millions of years can become an eternity. This is where the theory of energetic survival ceases to be simply scientific. It becomes philosophical. If the sun is the source of light, then the Earth is the source of stability. It holds within itself not only warmth, but also the memory of how to live in darkness. It has already survived periods of cold, global glaciations, and mass extinctions, and each time it has found a way to survive. Without light, she will lose the sky, but not her life. As long as there is energy within, there is movement, there is possibility. This idea is a silent protest against the apocalypse. As long as the sun is the center of our world, we are dependent on it. But should it disappear, it suddenly becomes clear. The Earth itself has its own heart, dim, invisible, but capable of burning for millions of years after the star's death. Of course, all of this is just a model. We can't test what would happen if the sun actually disappeared. But observations of other planets and satellites give us a clue. Life is much more resilient than we think. It can adapt to the darkness, feed on the warmth of the stone, grow where there is no light, but there is at least a crumb of energy. The theory of energetic survival tells us the Earth will not give up immediately. It will cool slowly, fighting for every degree, for every spark of internal warmth. Perhaps its surface will no longer have oceans and winds, but deep beneath the ice, microbes will still live, waiting out the eternal night. This isn't the life we're used to, but it's life nonetheless. The last whisper of a planet that refuses to disappear. Yet this idea is controversial. How long will geothermal heat last? How much energy will remain in the core? Will the magnetic field continue to protect the remnants of the atmosphere? And if it disappears, could deep-sea sources continue to exist in the vacuum of space where not even air exists? There's no definitive answer to these questions, but even the very possibility gives a strange sense of peace. Even if the sun dies, the Earth will continue to breathe the warmth of its interior for a long time. But life isn't just warmth. It's also light. And without light, all that remains will slowly fade. When the last ray fades, the question arises, is it possible to survive if not only the sun's energy, but also its gravity, ceases to hold the planet in orbit? What will happen to Earth itself when the force that has held it together for billions of years disappears? Will it fly off into the cold reaches of space? Or will it find a new path, a new star? This is discussed in the next theory. Theory 2. Orbital scattering and cold darkness. The sun has disappeared, and with it, its light, its warmth, and its power. While we've been talking about light, about the warmth that nourishes life, we've forgotten the most important thing. The sun doesn't hold us with its rays alone. It holds us with gravity. Its mass is almost 99.8% of the entire mass of the solar system. Its gravity is what holds Earth, the Moon, Mars, and Jupiter in an orderly orbital dance. But if the Sun were to disappear, gravity would disappear with it. And then the order, in which we have lived for billions of years, will fall apart. Underscore 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 underscore. This theory is called orbital scattering. It describes the fate of planets that are left without a center around which they orbited. From a physics perspective, it's both simple and terrifying. When the Sun suddenly disappears, the planet's gravitational tether to it is instantly broken. But by inertia, they continue to move, like stones thrown into the void. The Earth instantly becomes a homeless traveler. Its orbit is cut short, and it moves in a straight line in the direction it was when the Sun disappeared. There is no longer a center. No down and up. Only cold inertia. At first glance it seems as if the planets would simply fly apart, each on its own trajectory. But space isn't that simple. Each body attracts the others. Gravitational fields will begin to overlap. And after millions of years, the solar system will cease to be a system. The planets will begin to interact with each other, changing trajectories, colliding, pushing each other into open space. Earth could pass close to Jupiter or Saturn, and their enormous mass could change its path forever. One gravitational tug, and we no longer belong to this stellar family. Mathematicians call such planets wandering worlds, or orphan planets. This isn't science fiction. Astronomers have already discovered dozens of such bodies. They move in the dark, without a star, without heat, without an orbit. Some of them may have once been part of systems similar to our own, but were ejected into space during collisions. Now they drift between the stars, invisible, frozen, but still existing. If Earth becomes such a planet, its fate will slowly, but inevitably lead it toward cold. Without sunlight, the atmosphere will begin to freeze. First, the clouds will fall, the water will freeze, and then the air. Nitrogen and oxygen will turn into ice and settle to the surface. The sky will become solid. There will be no more sounds, because there will be no medium left to transmit them. Temperatures will drop to 240 degrees Celsius, just above absolute zero. The oceans will turn to stone, cracking, and beneath them, there will be only silence. Only deep beneath the surface, where the core's warmth still lingers, will the shadows of life remain. Bacteria, microbes, those that don't require light, and they will continue to exist, unaware that there is no longer a sky above. But Earth won't be alone. Perhaps other planets will share its fate. Mars, Venus, the moons of Jupiter, all of them will become wanderers, flying into the darkness. Sometimes their paths will cross. Sometimes they will be destroyed. Perhaps, in millions of years, the Earth will collide with another body, and this impact will end its journey. But before that, there will be billions of years of silence. Scientists have tried to calculate where Earth might go if the Sun disappeared. The answer is simple: anywhere. In space, there are no directions, only movement. We could be thrown beyond the galaxy, or we could pass close to another star, and then perhaps the gravity of the new Sun would catch us. This is the second part of the theory, a transition into cold darkness. the Earth doesn't die instantly, but it loses its sense of movement. It no longer revolves around anything. It simply flies. Thousands of years later, no one will notice the difference. Night and day no longer alternate. The planet is plunged into eternal darkness. If anyone remained on the surface, they would see not a black sky, but an endless darkness without shadows, because there is no longer a light source to create a shadow. And yet, even in this cold hell, there is room for a strange hope. In 2019, astronomers discovered a rogue planet, drifting between stars, yet still warm. It receives no light, but its internal heat has been preserved for billions of years. If such worlds exist, then Earth could be one of them, a ghost planet that flies in silence, yet holds within itself the glow of a once living heart. Philosophers often say that space is a mirror. When we look into it, we see not only the stars, but also ourselves. And perhaps the story of the sunless Earth isn't just about the planet, but about loneliness, about what happens when the very thing we orbit disappears. We continue to move by inertia, not knowing where to go. But we don't stop, because even without a center, life seeks a way. The theory of orbital dispersion is a story of movement without purpose, of a flight that knows no destination. This is not death. It is an eternal journey. Earth could fly through star clusters, through interstellar gas, through the debris of other worlds. It might even pass close enough to another star to be caught in its gravity and become part of a new system. With luck, a new sun will illuminate its icy seas, and then the ice will melt, the oceans will come alive, and life will emerge from the darkness once again. Perhaps this is how the cosmos works. Stars disappear, worlds wander, and then find a new home. And then it all starts over again. But there's another option. What if the sun doesn't vanish instantly, but dies slowly? What if it itself becomes the cause of the cold darkness, burning us before it goes out? This version is much more realistic. It doesn't require magic, only time. It's part of the natural cycle of the stars. This is discussed in the next theory. Theory 3. The possibility of an artificial sun. When we imagine the disappearance of the sun, we think of the end. Of cold, of darkness, of the light gone forever. But humans are built differently. Even when everything collapses, we seek a way to restore what was lost. It was from this desire that the idea was born. If the sun disappears, could a new one be created? We call this an artificial sun, not a myth, not a fantasy, but a very real scientific concept that has already begun to be realized on Earth. Underscore 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 underscore. The gist is simple. The sun is not a flame. It's not fire in the conventional sense. It's a thermonuclear reactor where hydrogen is converted into helium, releasing energy in the process, light and heat. It's this reaction that gives life to all living things. Scientists have long dreamed of replicating this phenomenon on Earth. Not in miniature, but for real. Reproducing the very principle of stellar combustion. This dream is called controlled thermonuclear fusion. In it, humans attempt to create a miniature sun in the laboratory. A confined fireball, where temperatures reach hundreds of millions of degrees. underscore 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 underscore. The first idea was born in the mid-20th century, when humanity first realized that atoms could not only be destroyed, but also combined. Destruction is atomic energy. Combination is the energy of stars. In the 1950s, Soviet physicists Andrei Sakharov and Igor Tamm developed the concept of a tokamak, a device in which magnetic fields confine plasma so it doesn't touch the reactor walls. This allows for temperatures to be reached at which hydrogen nuclei begin to fuse. Since then, the idea hasn't died. It has evolved into the International ITER project, currently under construction in France. This is the first step toward a true stellar flame on Earth. Underscore 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 underscore. Many call these experiments the first artificial sun, but for now, it's merely a symbol, a reminder that humans are capable of imitating the cosmos. If the sun disappears, and humanity has mastered fusion technology by then, we will be able to create a replacement. Huge orbital stations, in which thousands of miniature thermonuclear sources will emit light and heat. Not one sun, but many. The sky will change, but the light will remain. Underscore 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 underscore. It sounds like science fiction, but scientists are already taking the first steps. In China, for example, there's a facility called EAST, Experimental Advanced Superconducting Tokamak. In 2021, it held plasma at a temperature 5 times hotter than the sun for 17 minutes. This isn't just an experiment, it's proof that humans can ignite their own sun. It's still small, and it's still unstable. But then, the real sun was once a tiny ball of hydrogen, just beginning to burn. Underscore 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 underscore. The artificial sun scenario isn't a disaster, but an attempt to cheat one. If our star disappears, humanity could create a network of orbiting reactors, linked by mirrors and reflectors. They would collect the energy from fusion plants and direct it to Earth, maintaining temperature, photosynthesis, and climate. Such a network could shine for millions of years. If humans had hydrogen reserves at their disposal, or if they could extract it from space, from icy comets, asteroids, and interstellar gas clouds. This is a second win for civilization, an opportunity to preserve life in a world where the sun has perished. underscore 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 underscore. But this theory has a downside. It demands more from humanity than just technology. Building an artificial sun requires more than just knowledge. It requires unity, global cooperation, a common goal, and, most importantly, faith in the future. History shows that humans can create miracles, but they don't always know how to control them. The sun gives life, but an artificial sun can also bring death. If even one of these sources gets out of control, plasma in millions of degrees could vaporize everything around it. By creating a star, a person risks becoming the one who destroys what they were trying to save. Underscore 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 underscore. Some philosophers say the idea of an artificial sun is more than just a scientific project. It's a reflection of the human fear of being alone in the universe. We can't bear the thought of light disappearing forever. We strive to bring it back, even if only artificially. Maybe this is precisely our essence. We cannot live in the dark. We cannot accept the end. We build new beginnings. Underscore 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 underscore. This theory is also based on actual observations. Interest in fusion energy projects is growing every year. Dozens of laboratories already exist, where plasma is held longer and more stably than ever before. Astronomers are even discussing the idea of star factories, stations, that create mini stars and use them to power space colonies. If humanity survives the disappearance of the sun, it will have a chance to become a stellar civilization, one that is not dependent on a single star, but is capable of creating them itself. Underscore 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 underscore. And yet, even if we succeed in building a new sun, one question remains. Will we be able to restore life to its former form? After all, light isn't just energy. It's rhythm, time, inspiration. It's the feeling of morning warmth. When the world awakens, a machine can replicate the spectrum of light. But can it replicate its meaning? Could an artificial sun replace the one under whose rays life evolved? Or would it simply become a lamp, burning eternally over a dead planet? Underscore 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 underscore. And yet, if the sun disappears, the idea of artificial light will remain our last hope. It may not be a star. It may only be a reflection of what once warmed the earth. But this reflection is the result of intelligence, and therefore also part of nature. We may not be able to bring back the sun, but we can become it. Underscore 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 underscore. However, not all scientists believe humanity needs to replace the sun. Some argue that if the sun disappears, Earth shouldn't struggle for light. Perhaps nature itself is already preparing a different path. The world can change, adapt, and embrace darkness as a new environment. From it, new life can be born. Not sunny, but cold. One that will learn to exist without light. This idea sounds even stranger, but it will be the basis of the next theory. Impact on art and culture. When the sun disappears, it's not just light that disappears. What vanishes is what shaped our perception, our aesthetics, the very fabric of the human imagination. In a world without the sun, it's not just the day that's lost. Inspiration is lost. Underscore 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 underscore. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in the rhythm of light and darkness. We woke with the dawn and fell asleep under the stars. The sun defined not only biology, but also culture. It was a symbol of beginnings, strength, life, and truth. All ancient civilizations worshipped the sun. Egypt worshipped Re. The Incas worshipped Inti. The Greeks worshipped Helios. Even in modern religions and languages, the sun remains a metaphor. Enlightenment, illumination, radiance of the soul. When it disappears, humanity will have to find new images, new words, new beauty. Underscore 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 underscore. The first reaction is silence. Not metaphorical, but real. When the light disappears, everything slows down. The music sounds different, because there is no longer the sound of the wind, the rustling of leaves, or any reflections from surfaces. Everything becomes muted, as if the world itself were dressed in soft velvet. In such silence, music will change. It will become not a melody, but a breath. Rhythm will replace sound. Musicians of the post-solar world will create compositions from silence, from rare vibrations, from deep vibrations, felt by the body, not the ear. This is no longer music to the ears. It is music to the heart, to the memory of a sound that is no longer there. Underscore 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 underscore. What will happen to painting? To color? The sun is the source not only of light, but also of all color. Without it, the world would become gray. and even gray would cease to be a shade. Light creates shadows, and shadows create depth. When light disappears, perspective disappears. The painting becomes flat. The world becomes silent. In a post-solar civilization, painting will not disappear. It will be reborn. Artists will work not with color, but with texture, relief, sound, and tactility. Painting will become tangible, not visible. This is art that is perceived with the fingers, not the eyes. It doesn't depict. It reminds of what light once was, and what it was like to see. Underscore 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 underscore. Literature will also change. Words like morning, day, sunset, and radiance will lose their meaning. The familiar language of description, in which everything is connected to light, will disappear. How can we describe love without a look? How can we talk about time without dawn and twilight? Writers will have to invent a new language, the language of inner vision. Stories will be about what is felt, not what is seen. Sensations will replace colors. Smells, touch, vibrations, and warmth will become the primary means of description. So, perhaps, literature will become closer to music, to a text that is not so much read as resonated in the mind. Underscore 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 underscore. Perhaps new genres of art will emerge that we can't yet imagine. For example, tactile symphonies, works that are conveyed through surface vibrations and temperature rhythms. Sculpture will cease to be form. It will become movement. Every gesture, every touch will become an act of creation. The art of the post-solar world will not be for the eyes, but for the mind, for memories of light. Underscore 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 underscore. But what about inspiration? After all, it has always been born from interaction with nature, with the sky, with fire, with color. Can it survive in a world without color? Some philosophers say yes, because inspiration doesn't disappear. It just changes its source. In a world without the sun, people will begin to seek light within themselves, not in external light, but in the inner light. This will become a new form of spirituality. A new art, the art of inner radiance. The artist no longer depicts what he sees. He depicts what he remembers, or what he never saw, but wants to bring back. Underscore 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 underscore. Thus, art will become not a reflection of the world, but its continuation. Not a reaction to external light, but an attempt to create its own. Post-solar art is the art of memory. It is this art that will keep humanity from disappearing. When the light fades, underscore 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 underscore. If the sun disappears, inspiration won't die. It will simply change form. Because art isn't color or sound. It's an attempt to realize that you're still alive, even when the whole world around you is dead. The paintings may become darker, the music quieter, and the words shorter, but the meaning will remain the same. A desire to express what cannot be expressed in words. Underscore 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 underscore. A post-solar civilization will live not in darkness, but in the memory of light. And this memory will become the main fuel of its culture. It contains nostalgia, pain, beauty, and a strange, quiet gratitude for the light that once existed. Man will learn to create from emptiness, just as he once created from light. And in this lies his immortality. Underscore 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 underscore. So art won't disappear. It will become a way to resist oblivion. When nothing remains, no colors, sounds, movement, art will remain what makes us human. And perhaps it will become the light that will never go out. Underscore 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 underscore. But if art can survive, the question remains, can humans themselves survive? Not as a biological species, but as a being who remembers that there was once warmth. Can humanity not only live without the sun, but find new meaning in its existence when light becomes just a memory? This is discussed in the next theory. Collapse of consciousness, loss of meaning. When the sun disappears, the world darkens not only outside, it darkens inside us. As long as there is light, everything has shape, boundaries, and direction. Light creates not only daylight, it creates a vector. It tells us where the east is, where the beginning is, where to go. It gives meaning to every movement. But when the light disappears, so does the center. Not just the source of heat, but the idea of what it all comes down to. Underscore 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 underscore. The sun has always been more than a star. It was the foundation of the human psyche, a symbol of life, clarity, and truth. All cultures have associated it with consciousness. Psychologists and philosophers from Plato to Jung considered light a metaphor for the mind. When we say enlightenment, we're talking about a moment of understanding. When we say darkness, we mean not only night, but also ignorance, fear, and death. If the sun disappears, not only will the day disappear, the very distinction between light and darkness will disappear. The world will become a single, infinitely black space, in which opposites no longer exist, and then consciousness will no longer have support. Underscore 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 underscore. Philosophers call this the entropy of meaning. When energy disappears, order turns to chaos. When the sun goes out, what was clear becomes formless. At first, humanity will struggle. We will create artificial light sources, systems that replace daylight, new domed cities, where lamps imitate the sun. But this will only be an illusion. Light without the sun is not light, but a reminder, an imitation of life, in which no one feels true warmth anymore. Underscore 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 underscore. Over time, the concept of morning will disappear. There will be no sunrises, no evenings. Life will become a continuous existence, no longer characterized by the alternation of activity and rest. Biological rhythms will be erased. People will wake and sleep not according to the time, but according to their mood. Gradually, the very sense of time will disappear. Without the sun, there is no day. And without day, there is no history. There is only an endless now, in which past and future merge. Underscore 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 underscore. The collapse of consciousness is in a sudden madness, but a slow fading of meaning. We will live, but we won't understand why. And this is perhaps more terrible than any physical disaster. Underscore 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 underscore. When the sun was in the sky, we believed in progress, in moving forward toward light, toward knowledge, toward discovery. Everything we did was directed toward the light. Even art, even religion, even love. Everything was built on the idea of approaching warmth toward clarity. But without light, this direction disappears. Where forward becomes unimportant, because ahead is nothing. Underscore 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 underscore. Psychologists say the human mind cannot tolerate absolute darkness. It suppresses perception, blurs personality, and deprives the connection between the inner and outer worlds. In deep darkness, a person ceases to be themselves. They lose their sense of self. If humanity were to find itself in eternal night, perhaps consciousness would gradually dissolve, not die, but dissipate, like air that can no longer be breathed. Underscore 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 underscore. But perhaps it is precisely here that lies the boundary and the transition. When external meaning disappears, a person begins to search for the internal, not in the sun, but within oneself. The history of humanity is the history of mirrors. We have always reflected external light. Now that there is nothing left to reflect, there is only one thing left to do: turn on our own. Underscore 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 underscore. Some philosophers call this the inner sun. It doesn't warm or shine, but it provides direction from within. It's the mind's ability to create meaning where none exists. Even if the universe is indifferent, even if the stars fade, we can still create a reason to exist. Perhaps this is precisely what distinguishes man from darkness. Not that he lives in the light, but that he can invent light, even when there is none. Underscore 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 underscore. And yet, most will not survive. The loss of the sun is not just the physical death of a star. It is the symbolic death of all its pillars. Religion, philosophy, science. Everything will lose its foundation. When the sky no longer changes, when the stars are motionless, human thought freezes, everything will become endlessly identical. And in this monotony, the very idea of development will dissolve. Underscore 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 underscore. Gradually, a person will stop looking for answers. Then they will stop asking questions. And then they will stop even thinking about having lost something. Only a quiet existence will remain. Automatic, emotionless. Civilization will survive. But it will lose itself. Not because the light went out, but because the feeling that light was needed disappeared. Underscore 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 underscore. But perhaps not everything is so hopeless. Even if the external sun disappears, a spark will remain within every person. That tiny inner light that was always there. In poetry, in love, in the desire to understand. Perhaps this very spark will become a new center. Not a physical one, but a meaningful one. The small inner suns that burn within people are capable of uniting, creating a new light. the light of consciousness. Underscore 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 underscore. The collapse of consciousness is not the end. It's a test. When everything external disappears, we face the question, who are we without the sun? Without a reference point, without a center, without anything that gives meaning. And maybe the answer is not to bring back the light, but to learn to live without it. Not like shadows, but like sparks that themselves become sources. Underscore 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 underscore. If the sun is a symbol of life, then its disappearance is a test of life's authenticity. Will it remain if everything that makes it possible is taken away? Perhaps the meaning of life isn't in light, but in the urge to seek it. Not in warmth, but in moving toward it, even if that means walking in the dark. Underscore 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 underscore. When everything around is plunged into darkness, perhaps someone will raise their head to the sky and still say, I see, because light isn't in the sky. It's in the mind. And as long as a person can see meaning, even where it doesn't exist, the universe will never end. Underscore 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 underscore. Thus ends the final theory. Not about the destruction of the world, but about its internal continuation. Because even if the sun disappears, it will remain in memory, in culture, in everyone who once felt its warmth. And perhaps, in our darkest moment, we will understand. The sun was never just a star. It was a reflection of ourselves. And as long as there is at least one ray of light in us, the world is still alive. Underscore 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 underscore. But what will remain afterward? After all, what will happen when not only the light, but also thought fades? Will there remain anything beyond consciousness? Or will darkness become the final God? This question isn't about the future. It's about us, about how far the human light can reach. And it is there, in this darkness, that a new story begins. Theory 5. Echoes of light, the sun's memory. It is believed that if the sun were to disappear, everything would end in 8 minutes. 8 minutes is the distance from the star to us. But in reality, this is not the end, but the beginning of light's final journey. A photon born in the heart of the sun spent thousands of years breaking outward through dense layers of plasma until finally burst into space. It flew without knowing its destination, simply obeying laws that existed long before us. When the sun disappears, these photons will not disappear with it. They will continue their journey. They will scatter in all directions, despite the fact that they have nowhere else to return to. This is how an echo of light is created, the star's memory, which continues to live in space, even when the star itself is no more. Astronomers call these photons relic streams, remnants of radiation that will travel throughout the universe for millions of years to come. Even if we never see the sun again, its light will reflect off dust, planets, and comets, like the faint breath of a departed god. Someday, in the distant future, other life forms in another part of the galaxy may catch this light, unaware that they are looking at our past. And in these photons, they will see history. Everything that was once here. Cloud shadows, storm flashes, reflections of oceans, trails of human satellites, reflections of cities. A photon is not just a particle. It is a letter. And the sun has left billions of them. Unaddressed letters, encoded with everything we once saw and were. This theory says that, even when the source disappears, its light continues to exist, not as energy, but as a trace. And perhaps space itself is not a space of bodies, but a space of traces. After all, every photon, every ray, doesn't disappear. It simply moves so far away that we can no longer catch it. And this means that in some sense, the sun will never disappear. It will simply become invisible, dissolve into the very fabric of time, and live within it, like a quiet memory of warmth. Perhaps we are similarly constructed. When a person passes away, not only words or deeds remain. Imprints remain in other people, in their memories, in their glances. And if the sun is life for the planet, then we are its tiny rays, which continue their journey, even when the center has already faded. This thought is not about salvation. It is about memory, about the fact that nothing disappears completely. Light doesn't die. It simply becomes the past, which flies for a long time through the universe. And perhaps someday, millions of years from now, another civilization, looking through a telescope, will catch a glimpse of our light and ask, whose sun was that? Who lived beneath it? Who left this trace? And at that moment, the sun will be born again, not as a star, but as a memory that someone will decide to preserve. The echo of light is not physics. It is a reminder that even darkness consists of former light, that any shadow is simply light that lingered. And perhaps, as long as even a single photon from the sun still flies, the world has not ended, because somewhere, on the edge of eternity, a tiny particle of heat still burns, that once warmed the earth. Thus ends the sixth theory, about the light that never fades, about how the end is not a disappearance, but a transformation into memory. Perhaps the sun will indeed go out, but its light never. It will simply become part of the cosmos. And the cosmos, ultimately, is the light that remembers. The ending is always quieter than the beginning. When we talk about the end of the world, a world without the sun, thoughts become slow and heavy, like steps in deep snow. But it is precisely in this silence that what matters is most clearly heard. How different paths lead to the same horizon, and how each of them, in its own way, is right. We've traveled 5 paths. On the first, Earth led the way. The sky went dark, but the planet continued to breathe from within. The theory of energetic survival promises no miracles. It speaks of the simple, stubborn heat of the core, of geothermal vents in dark oceans, of bacteria unaware that there are no more sunrises above. This is a view of the resilience of matter. As long as there is energy, however weak, Life can linger. The hope here is modest, not for the salvation of humanity, but that the very word, life, will not vanish overnight. The powerful, earthly consolation of this vision is that it doesn't demand the impossible, it demands time, and time is the only thing abundant in the universe. The second path is centerless trajectories, the scattering of orbits, and the cold darkness. This is a story of movement robbed of its purpose, deprived of solar gravity, like a ship with a broken anchor, plunges into interstellar space. There is no tragic thunder here, only the mathematics of inertia. The planet becomes a wanderer, and darkness becomes not night, but a new definition of space. This theory is more rigorous. It is about recognizing that the order that seemed eternal rested on a single heart, and that heart has stopped beating. But even within it, there lives a quiet probability, the gravity of another star, a chance encounter, a new orbit, a new sky. This is a story of destiny without promises and, at the same time, without final condemnation. The third path is to challenge the darkness with human hands. The artificial sun is a theory both bold and tender. It acknowledges our mortal dependence on the star, yet immediately attempts to transform this dependence into an engineering challenge. Fusion, plasma, orbital mirrors, a network of sources that will replace daylight. This is a view on the dignity of technology, not to replace nature, but to extend it. Perhaps not one sun, but thousands of smaller ones. Not one sunrise, but a constructor of light. Here the hope is loud, almost proud, but within it lie a shadow. Light must be accounted for, and if an artificial day is possible, will it really be day? Will we be able to contain the star within civilization without tearing ourselves apart from within? The theory does not abolish risks. It merely shifts the boundary between the possible and the impossible, inviting us to try to stand on this boundary together. The fourth path, what once seemed peripheral suddenly becomes the center. Post-solar art and culture, a world without color, without shadows, without familiar perspective is not only a physical challenge but also a shift in the alphabet of feelings. Music seeks rhythms in silence and vibrations in the skin. Painting becomes tactile. Literature learns to speak without metaphors of light. Here, hope is not about the survival of the body, but about the survival of the form in which man recognizes himself. This theory does not argue with the others. It translates them. If the sun disappears, our familiar grammar of beauty disappears too, but grammar is not the only possibility of language, and as long as we have memory, art finds a way to exist. The fifth road is the quietest and perhaps the most difficult. A collapse of consciousness, in which not only light but also meaning disappears. Here, the sun is not a physical body, but an axis around which time, hope, and the idea of forward revolve. When the axis is removed, space remains, but direction disappears. This theory asks, can inner sun small sources of meaning within each person replace one large one? Or will darkness slowly dissolve not only emotions and myths, but also the will to continue history? This is not a sentence, but a mirror. If meaning was outside, it will disappear along with the sky. If it is inside, it has a chance to survive any cosmological news. 5 paths, and none cancels out the others. They are not parallel. Somewhere they intersect, somewhere they run alongside each other, and somewhere one continues into the other. The energy of the depths can feed the subglacial worlds of the wandering earth. An artificial sun can become the architecture of new rituals and cultures. Art can maintain an internal clock where the light that marked the day has disappeared. And consciousness can either extinguish everything or, conversely, ignite what technology and nature cannot. Ultimately, we are talking about the same thing: whether we can withstand the disappearance of the sun. Only each we has its own perspective. If you listen to these theories, they all share a common thread: the question of support, what constitutes the center, without which everything else collapses. Physical heat? Gravity, which sets the trajectory. Technology, capable of replacing what is lost? Culture, which preserves a way of life? Or the meaning that makes life itself called life? Each answer has its own time scale. Geothermy thinks in millennia, orbits in millions of years, engineering in project and generational timeframes, culture in eras, consciousness in moments and eternity, and each time, we are convinced, the shelf life of hope depends on where it is stored. One can imagine our future city under a dome, where an artificial midday smoothly gives way to an artificial evening to maintain biological rhythms. Music resounds in the square, not in the air, but in the slabs beneath our feet, imprinted with low vibrations. Bas-reliefs adorn the walls, readable by hand, as they once were by eye. Children learn in astronomy lessons not to look out the window, but at old notes where the sun is a circle, too bright to look directly at, dark water flows beneath. The ice on the embankment, warmed by the depths, people descend to subglacial farms, where unassuming organisms future-bred live in the warmth of geothermal mines. Neat pearls shimmer in orbit reactor stations, where stellar flames are held together by magnets. In the distance, navigation data appears on news screens. The planet's trajectory has shifted by a fraction of an arc-second. A distant gas John T has once again disturbed our line. We are on a journey, and it's a journey without a map. In such a city, a new prayer will inevitably arise, not to the light, but to memory. It will be short and quiet. Remember, because in a world without the sun, light is not something that falls on your face in the morning, but something you decide not to forget. And this decision can be formulated in different ways. Some will say that the meaning lies in preserving the biosphere in some form, and that will make the first theory true. Some will say that the meaning lies in flight and the search for a new star, and then the second will come to the fore. Some will believe in an artificial morning, and their truth will be the third. Some will remain in museums of silence, and will build a language for a world without color, and that will be the fourth. Some will simply close their eyes and say, "I exist as long as I see meaning," and let that be the fifth. Another way to ask this question is not how long a planet or civilization will survive, but what we will consider salvation. Is salvation millions of years of warm underground waters? Is it the chance to find ourselves in an alien system and one day see daylight again? Is it a network of lights that we ourselves will hang in the sky? Is it a culture that has not lost humanity in a world without flowers? Or is it the ability of one consciousness to remain undimmed where everything else fades? Any choice is legitimate, but every choice changes the trajectory, and perhaps these trajectories will intersect in one thing: the desire that after us, someone, somewhere, someday, will experience a dawn, real or imagined. If you ask which theory is correct, the answer will be honestly uncomfortable. All and none. The cosmos rarely grants us the luxury of a single explanation. It prefers both and, not either. It allows the earth to retain heat and simultaneously turns it into a wanderer. It gives us hands to build tiny stars and takes away from us the language that is accustomed to describing the world in light. It leaves humans the opportunity to go out and the opportunity to rekindle from within. Each of these outcomes is real in its own coordinate system, and none cancels out the others. We can choose a perspective that will make us feel better, or more honest, or calmer. We can divide our hope into several parts and hide them in different safes, in the depths of the earth, in the skies, in machines, in museums, in our hearts. We can decide what is more important to us: the continuation of the biological line at any cost, the continuation of human history as a culture, or the continuation of humanity as meaning. Or we can acknowledge that, ultimately, all three tasks stand side by side and cling to each other, like hands locked in a circle. And yet, when the final scene fades, there always remains one frame that cannot be captured by a camera, the one that everyone will see in their own way. Some will think they can hear the warm water murmuring deep within the planet in the silence. Others will think that somewhere far ahead, a new star is twinkling, and the Earth will still have an orbit. Others will think that an artificial east has lit up the black sky, and the city has exhaled. Some will think that a child runs his fingers over a relief painting and sees the sun in his memory. Some will think that a small, quiet fire has ignited in their chest, enough to keep them from getting lost in the darkness. Which of these frames is yours is up to you. Perhaps you'll choose all of them, perhaps none. That's okay. The difficulty of a world without the sun is that it demands not an answer, but a decision that each person makes for themselves. What to believe, what to build, what to remember, what to consider light. And while the sun is still air, we can practice this resolution. Learn to hold on to warmth if it leaves. Learn to move if the center disappears. Learn to construct light if it must be created. Learn to speak of beauty without color. Learn not to lose meaning when no forward burns in the sky. And perhaps then, if one morning does not come, we will still find something to wake up to. Where is the truth in the depths, in the trajectories, in the reactors, in the museums, in the mind? Let every theory remain alive as long as you have a reason to support it. Let this ending remain unfinished like any honest story about the future, and let the choice be yours, because perhaps the only unchanging sun is the one you choose to carry. Thank you for watching to the end. The world around us seems eternal as long as the sun shines. But nothing lasts forever, not the stars, not civilizations, not even ourselves. We can theorize, search for answers, invent meanings, but in the end, all that remains is silence, in which everyone hears what they fear most. At the moment, scientists don't know what will happen. But imagine that what you fear most is there. Perhaps fear is a reminder of life, that we are still here, as long as we are able to look into the darkness and see the light within it. Subscribe to the End of Eternity channel to stay up to date with the next look into infinity.